Yeah. Wizards can throw fireballs, but what's something useful for everyday fantasy life?
Come join us tonight as we explore everyday magic in a D&D game.
That's how we roll. 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 That's how we roll.
Welcome to the Goblins Corner. My name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight,
we're talking about everyday magic.
that's right, everyday magic in D&D.
Yes.
Tonight, we take 4 types of spells, any of these that you could use in D&D, and turn it into an everyday usage for NPCs or even for characters. Why are we doing this, Matt?
D&D and a lot of games kind of focus on combat-oriented spells, even though they've got other spells in their repertoire, or there are non-combat uses for combat spells.
So we're going to give some of that utility, some of that flavor back. Now, many of these spells you guys will recognize, and that's totally cool.
Probably all of them.
I think all of them. It better be all of them if you're not playing the game. In addition to that, hopefully we have some extra usage in these spells that you may not have thought of.
Just, something to get the creative juices flowing.
Yeah, I was in an Eberron mood the other week, and I wanted to just, what
Mage
else?
rights.
Yeah, what else could Mage Rights do? So we do happen to have a couple of ground rules for tonight's episode, though. First things first, can't be a healing spell, Matt.
Right, because that's clearly useful basically at any given point in time.
And in a magic world with healing spells, even if it's just cure or a mend spell, that's really, really, you're going to have people just do that.
Sure.
And that's fine.
We're not interested in combat spells. We are not saying that the spells that we are discussing could not be used creatively in combat, but they are not combat-oriented spells.
We're going to focus on more what we consider to be utility-type spells.
Right.
Speaking of which, all of the spells that we mentioned tonight are going to be 3rd level or lower. And in fact, most of them, with the exception of 1 or 2, are under 3rd level.
Yes.
We have a whole section on cantrips, for example.
Indeed. The reason for that is because realistically, anything over 3rd level is not everyday magic.
Yeah, once you get into the world breaking, it's all over. And also, kind of going on a storyline perspective as well, Mage Rights would probably be able to cast a cantrip or a 1st level spell.
Most often.
So if you're apprenticing to a business wizard, right?
Sure.
A bizzard, if I may.
You may not.
Okay.
Absolutely
well, fine.
not.
A business wizard, then, who lights the city streets, right?
With continual flame.
Yeah. Then he's going to study under that guy. That other guy might not know levitate.
Sure.
Might know only one spell. And that's totally fine because that guy has a job forever. Because I can continual flame on coins and everything else.
Yep.
Right?
And until I have provided light for the entire city at all times.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, our next rule is what?
All of these spells should have multiple uses.
Right. We are not going to do a one-trick pony spell. So all of these, you should be able to do at least 2 or 3 different jobs. And then finally, and most importantly, why we're doing this whole episode, what sort of everyday jobs do these spells assist with, and
who's using them?
What kind of people are using them, right? If a plumber casts a spell in a fantasy world, that's a great plumber, magical plumber, in fact.
Control water. Boom.
Hey, there
Plumber.
you go. We'll get to control water in a few minutes. But you know what? I need a magical plumber some days.
Sure.
Could have used it when the storms came down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Could have unflooded my basement. All right. So a good example of this, just to recap, is prestidigitation. Prestidigitation is a multi-use spell. Who would use prestidigitation, Matt?
Everyone with a brain.
Yes.
You can use it. Dishwashers could use it, or launderers.
Oh, yeah. Anybody that's cleaning something could use it.
Sure.
You could color things with it. Cooks might use it to spice up their dish.
You could actually use it in theater productions for lighting.
Oh, absolutely.
Just use color on the glass in front of the lights, and you could literally change the mood lighting every 6 seconds.
That and a minor illusion, very useful, right?
Sure.
In contrast, while it's a great spell, create food and water only does one thing.
Yeah, it pretty much is on the tin.
Now, it's not something that there are definitely majorettes that would just study create food and water, and that would be a very useful job.
It is fantastic for its purpose. It is not fantastic for much of any other purpose.
Absolutely. Now, tonight we have loosely broken these spells into 4 basic sections, and these sections are the following. First off, utility cantrips, because that could technically be a whole episode.
It really could.
Well, we're just going to pick 4 of them.
Cantrips are wildly overpowered when you start to think about them.
If you use them properly, cantrips can break the game.
Construction and agriculture spells.
Also very broken, and we'll get to why these are so awesome in a minute. Information gathering spells. Enough said, right?
Sure.
And finally,
Summoning spells.
which do everything.
100%.
So let's dive in, shall we? First up, utility cantrips.
That aren't prestidigitation.
Yeah, because again, prestidigitation does everything.
Right. That is its purpose.
We've picked 4 amazing cantrips that you should definitely use. And the first is one you've probably heard of, and yet has so many uses that no one uses it for.
Yeah.
What is that cantrip, Matt?
Gust. It's normally used to push a medium creature 5 feet.
That's it. Gust of wind,
It
right?
is nearly useless for its intended purpose.
Because it's technically a combat spell.
Right.
I push you 5 feet. Okay, that's great if I push you, I don't know, into a ditch. Or
Off a cliff.
Off a cliff is the typical use. Or
Off
push
a roof, yeah.
push you into the fighter within range.
Yeah.
Next to,
Into a fire, into a hazard.
it's nice, but there are so many better uses for Gust. Now, to push a medium-sized creature 5 feet, so one of the ideas we came up with is having a crew on board a ship all trained in the spell Gust, blowing a ship at the same time.
Sure.
Ships are gargantuan.
Yep.
But if you have enough people doing Gust,
If you have an entire crew,
yeah. Instead of rowing oars, they're just heave, gust, ho, gust, heave, gust.
you can use it to scatter seeds.
For farming?
Yep.
I think that's a great
Just
idea.
A palm full of seeds, gust, and off they go.
Theoretically, you could use it to gust some sort of projectile as well by that same nature, like a blowgun or a dart or something like that.
Theoretically.
You could have a long sniper that uses gust to power his blowgun. Think about that. A halfling sniper. He's got crazy hair.
Air Genasi halfling
Air
sniper.
Genasi halfling sniper, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like Liam Neeson
Sure.
as a halfling.
Right. Why not?
He's got skills. What else could you use Gust for, Matt?
You could theoretically use it to disperse clouds of insects.
Yeah, it's not by the rules, but guess what? You should definitely do that.
I'd allow it.
I would allow it as well. One of the things, we mentioned a blowgun. You could use it to toss an object that's not a medium-sized creature, like alchemist fire
Sure.
or a rock,
One of our favorite uses for this,
which is not combat related, by the way.
no, does require a little bit of buy-in from your DM or GM.
Okay, what is this?
Permanent windswept hair or cape, right?
Yes.
The anime protagonist methodology.
With the windswept hair, the cape blowing in the wind. I mean, it's a cantrip. You know what? You need some wind? Gust, right?
Sure.
You make an entrance? Gust.
I figure that should give you a bonus to diplomacy or intimidation.
Yeah.
Something in that realm, depending on how you're doing it.
If you get mad at somebody in a bar and you gust and you blow all of the dishes and their booze off the table, you're about to fight, right? But how intimidating is that? You just wave your hand and a gust of wind just whips it off the table. Takes the tablecloth, too.
Sure.
And the halfling.
Even in a fantasy world, mages are theoretically not super common. So simply letting someone know that you have magical ability should cause them to rethink where they're at today.
So we've got a typical mage. The scattering seeds could be a druid or some kind of farmer.
Or even a mage farmer.
Even a mage farmer. Mage farmer, yes. Green thumb adept, right? Could be, we got some combat ability as well. And of course, sailors.
Sure.
And we could also blow a fan that turns a motor too. Have a gnome inventor.
Yes.
Or operate a bellows for a forge.
Yes.
So very useful cantrip. Next up is a fun cantrip that most people don't take. Druidcraft. Guess who doesn't take that? Druids. Right. I don't know why, but it's very useful. You can create harmless sensory effects. You can sprout seeds, which is cool.
Yeah.
You can make flowers blossom, and you can light or snuff a candle, torch, or small campfire. You can light a small campfire. I say that again, folks. For the pyromaniacs in the room listening, you can light a small campfire. I mean, yes, you could snuff it out.
One could argue that this is a stand-in for Create Bonfire if you have organized your location well.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the fire effect first, okay?
Okay.
Because it has another ability as well. Snuffing a fire is very useful if you're a firefighter. And I could see people trained in Druidcraft putting out fires in town.
Sure.
Or forest fires in town.
Right.
If you live in a tree.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Elven firefighters. The Elven Firefighter Brigade.
No.
Yes. It'd be great. I love that. Now, we didn't mention one of the more important uses of Druidcraft, which is what, Matt?
Meteorology.
Yes, you can predict the weather.
For 24 hours. Do you know how useful this is on a boat?
Or on a farm, or honestly anywhere that you have to travel.
Sure.
Oh, you know tomorrow's going to rain like the Dickens? Okay, no problem.
We're going to go ahead and pay for a second night at the inn.
Yeah.
We already know how tomorrow's going to go. Screw it, we're staying here.
Now, Matt, you have a great example for making flowers blossom, which I never really thought of. Now, this is something that, again, very harmless, minor magical effect. You just go pop and the flower blossoms, right?
Yes. So hear me out.
Okay.
A merchant druid.
A merchant druid. Okay.
Yes.
A murid.
Murid?
Murid.
Murid.
Murid?
Sure.
Okay.
Making flowers blossom means you can literally make as many rare spices as you want. Saffron, one of the most expensive spices in the world, comes from the pollen of crocuses.
So it does. Yes.
Fennel pollen, there's plenty of other options.
So you're saying find rare flowers, rare plants, plant them, make the flower blossom so that you can get rare spices.
Right, because most of those things require to be picked at the peak of their, like as soon as they just open or at the peak of their moment. Well, if you control when it opens, then you can literally just pick as you go.
Well, for that matter, since you could sprout seeds, if you're a gardener for specialized plants or magical plants, if you haven't seen our Fantasy Plants episode,
Yep.
then you could do all kinds of shenanigans with that.
Sprout the seed, make it bloom, pick it, keep it moving.
Merchant druids, folks.
Yep.
Merchant druids are where it's at. Additionally, you can do some light effects. We mentioned harmless sensory effects, right?
Mhm.
So the lighting effects, the harmless sensory effects, you could use that for entertainment.
Making an entire theater smell like the location the story's set in. Or if it's storming, causing the wind to breeze out over the audience.
A druid actor, a dractor.
I need you to stop.
But seriously, all right, so you got the bard. He's telling a story. He might be even crafting some illusions, or they've got an illusionist in the theater. And then the druid's using druidcraft to make scents and smells and stuff like that, light or snuff some candles maybe for special effects.
Yep.
A special effects character in a story is really cool.
As a DM, you're going to get advantage or whatever the benefit that is appropriate for that particular thing.
That's right. Now up to our next one, and this is one of Matt's favorites.
The best cantrip in the game. I will argue with this with anybody. It's a hill that I'm willing to make and then die on.
I really like the next one, but tell me about your favorite.
Mold earth.
Mold earth. What can you do with mold earth, Matt?
You can excavate loose ground, make shapes that appear for an hour, and make difficult terrain.
Okay, so combat-wise, making difficult terrain's nice if you have some forethought. We've already talked about we're not doing combat, right?
Right.
So what can you do with excavating loose ground, making shapes that appear for an hour, and making difficult terrain? What's the first thing you would think of?
Grading land.
Okay, so now you have...
So this is the basis of my magical construction company. I need you to understand this.
All right.
You can grade land with it. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? Level it off, create drainage, whatever you need to do.
So professional magical ditch diggers.
Yes. But you can also dig basements, trenches, latrines if you're in an encampment, wells for water.
So I could imagine maybe soldier mage rights who just dig the latrines for the armies.
The Army Corps of Engineers would lose their mind if they had access to this cantrip.
Earthworks in general would be great. Imagine those crazy dungeons that all of the adventurers roll into. Somebody had to build those.
Yep.
That's easy. Mold earth, right?
Yep.
So long as you're not, in stone. And that's what stone shape is for after that.
And speaking of being underground, a sewer system, just flat out creating one of those as you go.
Sure, because then you would dig the actual corridors and then just line it full of stone.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea. And for that matter, if you're digging holes, you might as well build some traps. Combat traps, yes, of course, but I'm thinking more of like hunters and trappers.
Yes.
So imagine a druid, maybe, or a ranger, something like that, or honestly, anybody that wants to hunt big game, like deer, elk, or something like that, making pit traps to capture those animals.
Yep.
That would be very useful. You bring food back to the city, and again, in a magical world, you're using everything to your advantage. And then finally, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I never really saw a use until you mentioned it, shaping and coloring dirt and stone. Now, you can color stone as well,
Yes.
even though you can't shape the stone.
Correct. But you can color it.
Okay.
So once again, we're in the entertainment section here.
Okay.
This allows for animation.
So you could have a movie screen, a projector screen, which is just a big stone wall.
Yes.
That's really cool. Imagine, if you will, a bard doing the storytelling, playing a lute or something like that, right? And the druid is already doing the druidcraft stuff, maybe tosses some mold earth in there, coloring a visual story background behind the druid, you know, in like a 2D black and white shape, or even with full color and stuff like that, painting some sort of mural as the bard talks.
So hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
You get a couple of people with mold earth, and you have them be voice actors in the orchestra pit, and you do literal animation on the wall.
Earthworks cartoons.
Yes.
Sounds great. I love that. And in addition to that, you rule that you could do this for pottery as well, which I think is also really cool.
I feel like it only makes sense. It's only fair.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. Finally, we've come to our last cantrip of this evening, which is Shape Water, one of my favorite cantrips. This thing...
Also wildly amazing.
I'm not going to dive into too much of this because there are books written on just cantrip. Look at Treant Monk's stuff. There are all kinds of shenanigans you can do with Shape Water. You can manipulate water in a 5-foot cube, change its shape, its flow, its color, its opacity, and you can freeze it, and it lasts for an hour. This thing does everything. So I'm going to just break down a couple of typical jobs you can do and the people that might be using it. First off, breaking locks. All right, no problem. Yes, you're getting into a dungeon, but you also have a locksmith.
Sure.
Can't get into that thing? No problem. I'll break it for you, right?
Yep.
Thieves as safe crackers. Or here's an even more fun one. Go back to your magical construction company, right? You got to break up these rocks on this wall. No problem. You don't need dynamite. You just use Shape Water a couple of times. It's a cantrip, folks.
You cut a small crack in the stone, fill it with water, and freeze it.
There you go. Another thing you could do is...
Refrigeration.
Yeah. So I make a 5-foot cube of ice. Stick it in a block. It's going to melt.
Ice boxes.
And even if it disappears, if your DM rules that it disappears after an hour, that's an hour of it chilling the room. And everybody loves refrigeration.
Yes, because with refrigeration comes ice cream.
Yes, make an ice cream machine.
Yep.
I love this idea. Why not? That would be a lot of fun. Can you imagine going and getting ice cream in a fantasy world? How did you do this? Well, Shape Water.
It's a freaking cantrip.
Mm-hmm. Here's one I really like. Ice bridge across a lake.
Yeah.
Now, you can only do it in 5-foot blocks, but your party needs to cross. No problem. You call up the Magical Army Corps of Engineers, and they make an ice bridge. Go right across the lake. 5 cubic feet at a time. Bam. All right. Next 6 seconds. Bam. All right. The next 6 seconds. And they just keep going. Or they just have 2 or 3 of the guys running, and one guy goes, bam, and the other guy runs ahead of him and casts, and they just kind of, ice skate across.
Sure. We said we weren't going to talk about combat overly.
Correct.
But there are some absolutely vicious things you can do with
Make
this.
weapons and stuff like that. You can make a dagger that melts or disappears so that, someone has to solve the crime and stuff like that. And then Matt came up with some ridiculous shenanigans, which is an ice catapult and a decanter of endless water.
Right. You just turn the decanter of endless water on high, and the person standing beside them freezes a 5-foot cube of it as it's flying.
Or 5 cubic feet of the water that drenches the guy now freezes the guy into a prison.
Sure.
A la waterbending from Avatar.
Yeah.
That also works too. Wonderful spells, cantrips. Now we come to construction and agriculture spells. And Matt, we have 3 great spells for everyday usage.
The first one is, I feel like, super logical, and that's Tensor's Floating Disc.
Okay, this is a first level spell. What does it do, Matt?
It is a 3-foot, 1-inch thick disc that floats 3 foot above the ground and can hold 500 pounds.
All right, so a 3-foot disc carries 500 pounds, floats about 3 feet above the floor, and I think you can vary it a little bit.
Right. It just cannot go above 3 foot above the floor.
Who would use Tensor's Floating Disc aside from wizards trying to haul loot?
A moving company.
A moving company. I love this idea. Marvin's Magical Movers.
Sure.
They show up in a, Phantom Steed
Yeah.
pulling a cart.
And they,
Two burly wizards get out.
Yep.
Marvin's Magical Movers. They get out and all they do is cast Tensor's Floating Disc.
Yeah.
Literally under whatever they need to move. They don't have to pick anything up and they just kind of push it out.
Exactly. You could do it for in-city deliveries.
So Uber Eats for fantasy.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that too. Kid on a broomstick or a bike rolls up. You've got Tensor's Floating Disc behind you, delivers your order.
In the same method as Marvin's Magical Movers, which is now a thing that will happen in a game.
That's totally going, it's canon now.
Stevedores, the people who unload ships,
Mm-hmm.
go to the ship, levitate a big box up, walk it down the gangplank. It's not putting any stress on the gangplank.
So you have a mage rat that maybe also casts Gust and Tensor's Floating Disc, perhaps.
Yep.
Very valuable on a ship, right? Because I can push the ship along if it gets into the doldrums and help unload the ship. I also like this one, a floating stage. Tell me more about a floating stage for Tensors.
If you're in a crowded market and all of these people are hawking their wares or they're busking or whatever, being able to be above your competition means that people will naturally be drawn to what's going on over there. Is it a stilt walker? Whatever. Nope. I'm just a dude with a guitar playing on my own invisible floating stage.
Yeah, so this would be great for bards or anybody else trying to maybe get somebody's attention. In addition to that, you could also have it as an operations platform. So
Absolutely.
for military commanders or whatnot to move stuff around. And in that same vein, you could also...
Foreman of any sort.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody that wants to kind of sit above and maybe look at some stuff. Or maybe there's uneven ground and you just want to kind of survey.
Like you say uneven ground, I'm thinking of like a rocky, pebbly hillside or what. You don't want to end up taking a header.
Yeah, you don't got a goat. You just want to sit there while everybody works. And speaking of working, our final answer to this is scaffolding. You just have 1, 2, 3, 4, and you build the scaffold. It lasts for an hour.
Sure.
Right? Throw the scaffolding up, get your work done. Make sure you recast it in case they fall.
Right.
Now you have magical construction.
Yes. It's super useful. There's a lot of different methods to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I feel like it's great. Now, your next one is wildly overpowered as far as I'm concerned.
This is a second level spell, and it's from Wildmount. It is Immovable Object. Like the immovable rods, this thing is fantastic. You touch an object no more than 10 pounds, easily done. You pay 25 gold piece of dust,
Right.
and then it lasts for an entire hour holding 4,000 pounds.
1,000.
4,000 pounds. And it can be passworded to suppress, so you can turn it off or on.
Right. So you can move this object.
Yeah, now I've seen people use this as traps.
Sure.
And that's really fun because you cast this on one of the boards on a bridge and then you password protect it. And if they don't have the password, they fall.
Sure.
No big deal. But again, going on the magical construction team here, this is a crane lifter.
Absolutely.
You can make steps out of this thing because if you have the gold dust, and why wouldn't you? 4,000 pounds. Okay, no problem. Find something really hard and almost unbreakable, right? Mithril or some kind of metal, a chunk of metal that's no more than 10 pounds, and cast that as steps or scaffolding. You can hold up a crane.
And the big kicker here, the massive thing that I feel like arguably makes it overpowered, is that if you upcast it to 6th level,
It's permanent.
permanent.
Permanent. So you want your floating city? You've got your floating city. Now, it's going to take an actual wizard and not a mage rat to upcast this thing.
Sure.
So
I mean,
everyday stuff, not really a big deal. But if we're living in a fantasy world, there's going to be a wizard that can cast a 6th level spell at some point.
and arguably, this might be their wizard's tower, just floating in the sky.
Maybe this is how they built their wizard's tower, by literally making everybody else's house float and charging them an outrageous amount.
I also like the idea that the mage's college is in the sky, and the only way to enter magic school is to be able to make it up there.
All of the bricks on the bottom level of the mage's school have been cast with a permanent immovable object. And it's just literally the foundation of the school.
Yes.
And just to be assholes, it probably floats like 6 feet above the ground and no more.
That could be fun. I was actually thinking of having it like 20 feet up, and you have to be able to get there by magical means to be able to enter the school.
This spell is only limited by your creativity and your perchance to piss your players off. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, there could be a
or
lot
your
of
players penchant to piss you off.
that also as well. Finally, we have one extra spell under our construction, which is what, Matt?
Plant growth.
Plant growth. This is huge. And most likely someone listening in is going to be like, yes, of course, plant growth.
Right.
There are two versions of this thing. It's a 3rd level spell, by the way.
Right.
The first one takes an action, and the other one takes 8 hours. Talk to me a little bit more about plant growth.
The 1 action version is a 100-foot radius of plants become thick or overgrown.
Okay, easily done.
Mm-hmm.
The 8-hour version does what?
Enriches the land within a half-mile radius for a year that yields twice the normal amount of food when harvested.
Okay, so let's break this down really quickly. A 100-foot radius of plants immediately become just overgrown.
Yes.
Or you enrich half a mile radius for a year and yield double.
Correct.
Why not both? You can do both. You can cast this spell twice.
You absolutely can.
You can cast this spell twice. Now, this is why druid farmers are the...
There is also technically nothing that says you can't cast it on the same half-mile radius over and over and over again.
I want to break this down. Step 1, you enrich half a mile of land.
Mm-hmm.
Step 2, you plant some seeds or whatever you want, cabbages, right? Got to have some cabbages in a 100-foot radius. Maybe you're using mold earth while you're doing this.
Sure.
Because you don't want to actually, dig. Come on.
That sounds like
I'm
work.
a druid, man. I could turn into a bear, bite people's faces off. I'm not going to do some kind of
manual labor.
I'm not using a shovel. Step 3, you blow an action and you instantly have your cabbages.
Yes.
So in 8 hours and 6 seconds, not counting the mold earth, you've got crops for the year.
Yeah.
And you just kill it all the way down. You got a whole half mile that's doubly enriched. You could just have farmers plant normal crops if you want.
If the only plants that can grow wild are plants that are food crops or something in that arena, then you can absolutely make enormous amounts of food in very little time.
Now, if you think this breaks your fantasy economy, we've got 2 other things that make it even worse.
Yes.
The first one is, I love this so much. This is how you make a tree farm.
Yeah.
A lumber mill with no forest.
Right.
Talk to me about this.
Okay. Just like if the only plant in the area is a food plant, then it's obviously going to overgrow the food plants.
Correct.
What if the only plants in the area are trees?
Then you overgrow the trees.
Right.
So you have a lumber mill with a 100-foot radius of just small saplings, and you overgrow them.
You use druidcraft to sprout the acorns.
Mm-hmm. Which is a cantrip.
Mm-hmm. And then you cast overgrowth for the plant growth. They grow up, you lop them down, and you make lumber out of them.
So basically, day 1, you come in, and the whole half-mile radius is just yielding double.
Right.
Day 2, because the druid's getting tired, right? He goes to bed.
Sure.
Sure, why not? He turns into a bear and lumbers off in the woods. Day 2, he rolls back up. Everybody set the lumber mill up. They're ready to cut some trees down. He has a whole bunch of acorns. He scatters them. He uses druidcraft to sprout the seeds. And then in 6 seconds, you have a pine forest in a 100-foot radius. 100-foot radius of trees is a lot.
Yeah, it's a pretty good bit.
That's a lot of dense trees. And they spend the rest of the week cutting those trees down. Now, if the druid feels particularly froggy, he might blow another 3rd level spell and do it again.
Sure.
And then he rests because he's so tired.
Oh, my life is so hard.
There is no reason that any druids in the forest in your fantasy world should be pissed off at encroaching settlements when they can literally step out, below 2 third-level spells.
And stop people from encroaching.
Correct. Now, what's even worse than that, Matt came up with, and I cannot even believe this, I didn't think about it.
In the DMG, a lot of poisons are made from plants.
And you just overgrow the plants.
You overgrow the plants.
Or drugs.
Right.
So you have a drug operation.
Right. Either a poison or a drug operation, or both. Why not just, half the field?
Sure. That sounds ridiculous. Congratulations, DMs. Now we're giving you nightmares for what your players can come up with.
Or we're giving you options for your new criminal syndicate.
Oh, very good. I like that. Other things I happen to like are what, Matt?
The question of the week.
And tonight, what do we have for the question of the week?
Through some cosmic event, you find yourself able to cast one cantrip.
One cantrip only.
In the real world.
In the real world.
What is it, and why is it prestidigitation?
Well, of course it's prestidigitation, but let's say it's not prestidigitation. Maybe I'm not blessed with prestidigitation.
Right.
It could happen.
It could.
I would definitely choose that over anything else. I'm just saying. Maybe shape water. But let's say I don't have these options. I would say my answer to everything is generally to set it on fire.
Mm-hmm.
So create bonfires is a wonderful spell.
Sure.
Think about it.
And it makes a real fire, unlike flame bolt.
5-foot radius. It keeps burning.
Yeah.
It's not going to stop. You want to talk about internal combustion, folks.
Now, for me, my first instinct is spare the dying. Here's the thing. I don't work in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so if some giant dude is randomly roaming around the hospital answering codes, that giant dude's probably going to get arrested.
True.
So we're going to set that off to the side.
That, by the way, also would be awesome in a fantasy world.
Yeah.
Where they have a code stat and the dude just comes up, spare the dying, and then leaves.
Yeah.
Check on him in 8 hours.
Yeah. Get a doctor or something. That's not what I do. So one of the things I would want to check out is how much electricity does lightning lash or shocking grass make? And can you use it to make power?
I like that idea. I think that's a lot of fun.
And could I feed enough energy back into the grid that they just pay me a living wage?
There you go. Of course, we're always interested in your answers to the question of the week. And if you have one, hit us up at Goblin's Corner on all the various socials.
Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can comment down below. That is what the section is there for.
We like comments.
Yes. We also like to know the answer to these questions. I want to know what other cantrips people would use and why.
Yeah. So we're talking about everyday spells that you could use for your NPCs in a fantasy world that people would actually take, aside from Fireball.
Sure.
And we're on to the information gathering portion of our program.
Fireball, not super good for that.
Not great for information gathering. Well, you fireball one person and then you ask the rest of the group a question. So intimidation, yes. So we have 6 spells that really can revolutionize a fantasy world if you play them right. The first couple are Speak with Animals, which is a 1st level spell.
Sure.
Speak with Dead, which is a 3rd level spell.
Right.
And Speak with Plants, which is a 3rd level spell. So the Speak with spells.
Yeah.
I dare say probably they're all useful in their own applications. Speak with Animals and Speak with Dead probably more useful than Speak with Plants.
That's going to be determined by how your DM plays plants.
Sure. What can you do with Speak with Animals, Matt?
Speak with Animals, for one thing, would be perfect for animal trainers.
Because you understand what they're saying.
Yes.
What is it, for like an hour or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could get them to do things. Now you still need to, use animal handling, stuff like that. But could you imagine a dog whisperer that's literally a dog whisperer? What a cool job that is.
Nobody is going to question being tailed by a squirrel.
Or a cat in a city.
Right.
Or a rat or something like that. So,
a pigeon.
Yeah. The types of information with these various spells can vary, but they're all really, really useful. I mean, again, Speak with Dead. Who killed you? Okay, no problem. Speak with Plants. How are the crops doing?
Right.
So who would use these 3 spells?
Investigators, obviously.
Yes, for solving crimes.
Right. Criminals for causing crimes.
Yep. Scouts.
Sure.
To scout the land, right? Did you see an army roll through? And the tree goes, yes, I did. Or no, I haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah.
What's an army?
Right. Farmers. Like you said, you can ask your crops any questions.
Mm-hmm. Why is the corn sad?
Right.
Oh, needs more magnesium.
Or also settlers. Like Frontiers people, it would be awesome. All of these would be awesome for them.
Asking how the cows are could potentially help things out before they get sick.
It'd be also great for cowboys.
Yes. So a lot of different professions for just the speak with spells.
Our next one is Alter Self, which is a 2nd level spell.
And this is one that you may not think about as information gathering, and yet it is kind of.
Yes.
It's got a lot of different uses. In fact, I'd say there's 3 main aspects of this spell.
Indeed. One of them is aquatic adaptation.
And I want you to kind of rack your brains here. Think about this. First off, fishing's a lot easier to do when you're breathing underwater, spearing stuff.
Sure. Also, if you can look underwater, you can see maybe this school of fish is not the type of fish I want to pull up.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're on top of the water, you see the movement, you throw the net, and you hope.
But if you're underwater with the net,
Right.
just grabbing stuff like stuffing it in a bag, that's really useful. What else can you use that for?
Pearl diving.
Oh, yeah. Or treasure hunting of some sort.
Sure.
So I can imagine maybe salvage operations would be very useful with Alter Self, the aquatic adaptation part, because, oh, there's a shipwreck down there? No problem. We got it.
Yep. We'll just swim down.
Yeah.
This one is not so much information gathering, but it is a side usage of it. You can clean the hulls of ships without having to dry dock them.
That would be very useful for also patching from damage as well.
Yeah, also, that would apply to piers too.
Sure. And this, fixing piers underwater instead of having to,
completely relay them or what have you.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of different uses for the aquatic adaptation. Now, the second one is the changing your appearance one.
Sure.
And this one is obvious for espionage.
Right.
But think of some jobs that ordinary people would have with this 2nd level spell. All right, first off, cops.
Yeah. Undercover cops.
Undercover cops using Alter Self to just go as anybody. And this doesn't have to be, by the way, Alter Self the spell. It could also be a hat of disguise.
Sure.
And that also would be useful in this case. Criminals, as we've mentioned, would definitely use Alter Self. I would never wear the same face twice.
Or if I did, it would be my criminal face.
Yeah.
And then, my normal day-to-day face.
Scout spies and so forth, that makes a lot of sense. But think about, once again, entertainment. Why do you need makeup and prosthetics when you could just change the shape of your face?
This would also give rise to royal body doubles and things like that.
Uh-huh. So the king comes out to make a speech, gets hit by an arrow. It's okay. It's not the king.
Right.
It's the court mage. Sorry, buddy. Well, finally, natural weapons. And this is awesome.
Grow claws, fangs, spines, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things we talked about here was a hairdresser.
Yes.
Just Edward Scissorhands.
With crab claws?
Yeah.
Just like a Cancer from Fairy Tale. Cha-cha-cha, cha-cha, baby. Yeah, that would be great. Or a gardener.
Yeah.
Imagine snipping like
Who
Edward
needs pruning shears? Just snap.
Yeah, a lot of fun. So think about some of the uses that natural weapons might come up with your game and maybe attach a profession to it.
I would argue that one of the most useful of these is locate plants or animals, and that's a 2nd level spell.
This locates the creature or plant within 5 miles.
Yes.
5 miles. Now, you haven't gotten there to speak with it yet, but that's fine. If you could locate something within 5 miles, there's a lot of different professions that an NPC would have. First off, criminals, of course.
Sure.
Because you're scoring drugs, poisons, various other implements of destruction. Maybe snakes, right? Because you can locate creatures.
Yep.
Poisonous scorpions. Or even, think about this, maybe you are a poacher.
Yeah.
And you're looking for specific types of animals that you can sell on the black market.
That also would be good for exotic pet sellers.
Yes. What other occupations would you have?
Healers would love this spell for medicinal herbs.
Find all of the different ones in the forest without having to actually go and scour the forest. You just sit there. What do I need today? Oh, I need some balming plant, and I cast the spell.
Bee balm, monk's hood, just wob, 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 wob.
Sure.
That way.
Hunters and farmers would obviously find this very useful, once again, for the same reasons that healers would. Commanders in an army, however, would find this most useful.
Yes.
And I'm going to break this down because this takes a little bit of thought here. Remember, it can be a closest creature or plant within 5 miles. So the idea is all senior officers keep a colored mouse in their pocket. You
Right.
could just have all one color, which is great. Or if you're more savvy, and Matt brought this up, you have a different colored mouse for each officer in your army.
Yes.
Pink mouse, blue mouse, you just dye their fur.
Right. And they have to be non-standard mice.
Yes. Or every commander has a specific pet.
Right.
You know, Bill's got the cat. Frank has a hippopotamus.
Yes, a battle hippo.
That would be awesome.
Hungry hippo.
So then I cast locate animals or plants during a battle. I know exactly where all of my commander's armies are located. I have a tactical map in my head of where they are, and then I can have my court wizard, or if I'm the court wizard, I then cast, ascending to tell them where to maneuver.
Sure. I don't feel like it'd be difficult to find the battle hippo, but other than that.
Multiple uses for locate plants or animals, a lot of different fun professions.
Yes.
Finally, we've got clairvoyance, which is a 3rd level spell.
And this one I feel like is logical for information gathering, but I do feel like we've provided some alternate uses.
Obviously, it's for scrying,
Right.
and you can either listen or see. It's 10 minutes, 1 mile. A lot of good stuff you can dig up for 10 minutes and 1 mile. But Matt, you came up with something really interesting.
To me, this is the perfect way to create an instant messenger.
So explain this a little bit deeper.
Okay. If I'm scrying you
Mm-hmm.
and you're scrying me,
Yes.
we both just write down news. The king's assassin still hasn't been uncovered.
Mm-hmm.
And then your response is, excellent. Keep us abreast of all situations involving this. Is there any other news? And then I write, the other news is XYZ. And we just keep writing back and forth to each other because we're reading what's on the other person's paper.
Yes. And the thing about this is only one person really needs to know where to scry as well. So you could have a series of informants that go to a particular bar. They leave something written on the table, and then after 5 minutes, they crumple it up or whatever. And at a particular time, every day in this bar, the court wizard, who is the master of intrigue,
Sure.
casts clairvoyance and now gets an update from his spy network of the doings and goings. Or as you mentioned, a 2-way Zoom conversation because they both cast clairvoyance at each other, and now they can communicate
Another thing
in
that
real time.
Yes. Another thing that would be really amazing is coded messages on a job board, and the wizard would only have to take a once-a-day snapshot of that job board, like actually go through, read the job board for the coded messages, and then keep it moving.
That would be delightful as well. One other final use I was thinking about, if you were like nobility, like a king or something like that, you could use this to keep track of your underlings as well.
Sure.
You'd know where they were. Oh, is my gardener secretly putting poison into his shears to stab me in the back? Is the cook putting poison into my food to secretly poison me?
Useful information to have.
Yeah, kings get poisoned a lot, man. You got to figure that out. Play it paranoid, folks.
If you're not immune to poison and you're a king, you're doing something terribly
You don't have
wrong.
to detect poison.
Right.
You're doing something wrong. So a lot of fun uses for those communication spells. Lastly, we have our final set of spells, and we save these for last because their uses are literally limited to your imagination, and these are summoning spells.
Yes.
They can pretty much do anything. They're great utility. They can be used for information gathering. You can summon a badger to plow a field so you can do construction. You can literally do all of the 3 things that we mentioned previously with summoning spells.
Yes.
And here are some good ones. Again, all of them under 3rd level. First up, what do we have, Matt?
Unseen servant.
Unseen servant. And I know everyone in the background is screaming, of course, unseen servant.
/ tiny servant for druids.
Tiny servant is a 3rd level spell, a little bit more powerful, but pretty much the same spell.
Right.
One lasts 1 hour, which is unseen servant, which, by the way, you can do as a ritual if you're a wizard.
Yes.
And tiny servant is 8 hours. Lasts a little longer, but you're blowing a third.
Right.
Who would use these spells, Matt?
Everyone with access.
Okay.
So, cleaning companies, obviously.
Yes.
Line cooks.
To chop all the carrots.
Yeah, you literally just have them do the prep.
Assembly lines, speaking of which, you have a magical factory where a couple of wizards ritually cast unseen servant every day to do specific tasks, and you just have a factory that builds carriages or whatever you want it to do.
Sure.
Or you have a bunch of druids that clock in for work. Some urban druids, and they have tiny servant that they blow, and it lasts for 8 hours, and they check out. With one spell, they receive a paycheck.
They've done their work for the day.
They've done their work. What else can you do aside from like assembly line stuff?
You could use these to copy texts.
Sure. So scribes now don't have a job.
Right. Because they don't need to be able to read them. It's literally just transliteration.
So now you have printing presses, essentially, made from unseen servants.
Yes.
You could also use them for gem polishing, filing objects, and sharpening weapons. So again, routine, mundane tasks.
Yes. Boring, repetitive tasks, especially for the gem polishing.
You could also use them to generate power. And how, Matt?
They're the gerbil for your wheel, man.
Yeah,
You just
have them turn or crank a wheel or run on a wheel, particularly the tiny servant. That lasts 8 hours of time.
Yeah.
So you
and
blow.
it's stronger than the unseen servant.
Yes, so you have a couple of them powering a giant wheel.
Once again, going back to the farmsteads we were referring to earlier, you literally just have them plant seeds.
And this would be great for Unseen Servant because it's a ritual spell, so you don't have to blow any spells on this.
Yep.
You just have them move earth, then give them some seeds, they plant the seeds, you have the laziest farmer in the world.
The caster stands in the middle of the field with a nice little parasol, and in a 120-foot radius, the whole thing gets planted.
Now we've got more summoning spells, of course. The second ones we have are Summon Beast, which is a second level spell.
Right.
And then summon everything else, right? Summon fiends, summon lesser demons, fae, whatever it is, right?
Right.
And those are mostly, I think, thirds. I would say Summon Beast is the most useful of the types,
Sure.
but they all have their various uses. Let's kind of dive into that a sec.
Okay. Beyond Beast, also skeleton creature.
Beast and Undead Skeleton are, I would say, the best. And the reason is because they can do manual labor that maybe your Unseen Servant or tiny creature can't.
Including a tiny fae. Not so much with the big strength.
Yeah, but a skeleton just rocks it, man.
Yep. Never going to get tired.
Never gonna get tired, can run in that wheel forever.
Yep. Obviously, they can do construction work, digging, hauling, hammering. I wouldn't trust them with anything that requires any brains,
Mm-hmm.
but
Assembly line stuff, you could have a row of skeletons building you whatever.
sure.
Factory workers, an undead factory workers.
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, corporations in the real world would love that.
Turn this wrench 3 times. Pass it down the line. Yep.
Yep. Just keeps on moving stuff, right? Essentially, pick a job that doesn't require too much planning and they could perform that job. Get creative with this. Stevedores, yes. They could do moving, yes. You could have them lay down bricks, sure. Have them shovel horse manure.
I wouldn't trust them for bricklaying structurally, but like cobbling a road.
Digging a ditch,
Yeah.
shoveling sand. All those sort of things. These would be great spells to summon a beast. A badger can dig a hole, or trench, latrines and such.
Yep. Organizing a warehouse.
And all for one spell.
Yep.
Finally, we come to the greatest of the summoning spells, which is not really a summoning spell. It's an animation spell.
Right. Animate Dead, 3rd level spell, arguably one of the most utilitarian spells that exists.
Provided you keep it controlled by casting it every 24 hours, you have permanent labor
Sure.
that runs in that wheel, that chops all the things, that lays the bricks, that does whatever you want, washes windows and such. Hell, maybe even have it sew things to mend. I wouldn't have it chopping vegetables unless it's like a clean skeleton. That's what you use prestidigitation for.
Sure. I would use it for hemming sails.
Oh, yeah. Have an undead crew member just on board.
That does nothing but hem the sail. Like,
And if it falls, oh, well, you animate it again.
right.
Yeah. You could use it to pick weeds, quarry rock, mine for hazardous materials.
That would be great. Yeah.
You don't need a canary in a coal mine when the canary's undead.
It's true.
And finally, and this one I thought was really interesting.
You can use them to blaze. I mentioned cobbling, but you could actually use these guys to blaze trails. You point them in a direction.
Cut everything down in this area. And they just go at it.
Yep.
They hate life anyway.
Sure.
So just have them just mow through stuff. So there you have it. 4 types of spells that you can use in your campaign to add more flavor to your mage rights, perhaps, or even just kind of enhance the fantasy aspect of your D&D game.
Little magical industrialization.
Yes, it's good for you, right? And this, of course, would be perfect for Eberron. This would be great in any high fantasy setting. Forgotten Realms it should definitely be in.
Yes.
Particularly if you're doing Acquisitions Inc.
Sure.
I mean, if someone's picking up a paycheck for, casting that one plant growth spell.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So think about that. Any questions or comments? Hit us up at Goblin's Corner on all the socials. Did you enjoy this podcast? We're casting a few more. Subscribe to it on your favorite player, YouTube and Twitch.
Click the 5 stars and give us a review on iTunes and Podchaser. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps get our show in front of more people. It boosts the show and feeds the hungry algorithm.
He's currently drawing a animated circle to ritually cast an undead creature to serve us forever.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I'm going to have it definitely clean my house. That's all the time we have for tonight. Once again, my name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
We'll see you next time.
Have a good night, folks.
The Goblin's Corner is written and produced by Eric Holden and Matt Staples.
Show song by the Mighty D20.
What a wonderful guy.
This is a Subterranean production.
The end.